Ever feel like happy and sad just kind of fall short? Like there's this whole, I don't know, spectrum of emotions inside us, but finding the right words, well, that's the tricky part, right?
Mm-hmm.
So today we're diving deep into those finer shades of feeling, exploring 20 adjectives pulled from, get this, a text for English language learners.
Okay.
But don't worry, this isn't about, going back to school or anything like that. Think of it more like upgrading your emotional vocabulary, to become even more expressive.
It's like the difference between glancing at a sunset and actually truly seeing it, like those subtle color shifts, how the light plays on the clouds.
Okay, I love that analogy.
The richer our emotional language, the richer our experience, both internally and out in the world.
I'm with you on that. So to kick things off, let's start with a few familiar faces, those everyday emotions we all know. Happy, sad, excited, angry, tired, afraid, nervous. Our source text, it gives us a simple sentence for each one, kind of like a springboard for our emotion.
Okay, Ellie.
So for happy, it's, I am happy because today is my birthday. Basic, sure, but it gets at that connection between happiness and good things, positive events, wouldn't you say?
Right. And what I think is interesting here is that even something as seemingly straightforward as happiness, it can actually play out in so many different ways. Like, think about the quiet contentment of a Sunday morning.
Oh, yeah.
Versus, like, the explosive joy of winning a championship game, right? They're both happy, but they have totally different vibes, different intensities.
Totally. Like, happiness has levels to it. Okay, so on the opposite end of that spectrum, we have sad. And the source, it gives us this. She is sad because her cat is sick.
Which, that highlights how often sadness comes from loss, things we can't control.
Yeah.
And also it shows how much we can feel sadness for others. Like, think about the last time a friend was going through something rough.
Yeah.
You felt that sadness with them.
100%, yeah. Empathy in action.
Exactly.
Okay, so moving on from sadness, let's tackle excited. Our source, it gives us, the children are excited about their trip to the zoo.
Anticipation. That's a core of excitement right there. It thrives on the future, on those things we can't wait for, like that zoo trip. It's that feeling, right? That buzz of almost there.
Yes. And it's contagious, right? Like, even if you're not the one going to the zoo, you can't help but feel a little bit of that excitement.
Absolutely. Okay, now let's talk about an emotion that, well, sometimes gets a bad rap. Angry. Our source gives us, he is angry because his brother broke his toy.
Classic. Sibling rivalry, right? But, it makes you think, is it really just about the toy? Or is it about something bigger, like fairness, respect?
Exactly. Anger often flares up when we sense injustice or someone crossing a line. In this case, that broken toy, it's a disruption of this kid's sense of order, of how things are supposed to be.
Which is why it's so important to get to the root of anger, not just react to how it looks on the surface. Okay, let's move on to, well, I think we can all relate to this one, tired. The source keeps it simple. I am tired after working all day.
Oh yeah, universal feeling right there. That feeling of being completely drained, physically or mentally. Right. But here's where it gets interesting.
Yeah.
Tired, it can be a bit of a cover for other emotions, Think about a time you were just too tired to go out. Was it really exhaustion, or maybe a little anxiety, a little overwhelm underneath?
Wow, that's a really good point. So, like, tired can almost be, I don't know, a bit of a chameleon.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, to wrap up this first set, we have two that often go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Afraid and nervous. Our source gives us, she is afraid of spiders, and I am nervous about my exam tomorrow.
And the interesting thing here is the timeline. Fear. Like in that spider example, that's often a gut reaction right now to something we see as a threat. But nervousness, that tends to be future-focused, that knot in your stomach about what might happen.
So it's about whether the threat is right here, right now, or if it's something down the line. That's a really, really helpful distinction. Ready to explore some even deeper emotional territory. We're going beyond those basics now into feelings that really add some texture to how we experience things.
Absolutely. These next 7 words, we're talking surprised, proud, bored, confused, lonely, frustrated, and hopeful. They paint a much more detailed picture of our everyday lives.
Totally. Okay, so first up, surprised. Our source gives us, he was surprised when his friends gave him a gift. But surprise, that's a bit of a wild card, isn't it?
Oh yeah, big time. It all depends on the context, right? Surprise party, pure joy. Unexpected bill in the mail, not so much. Yeah. It's so interesting how our brains handle the unexpected. There's that split second where we're trying to process it and then bam, the feeling hits.
Right. And sometimes that feeling is relief. Sometimes it's disappointment. Sometimes it's just like, wait, what's happening?
Exactly.
Okay, let's switch gears to something a little more, well, consistently positive. We've got proud. Our source pairs this one with, she is proud of her painting. It's about really owning your accomplishments, when you say.
Totally. Yeah. It's that deep satisfaction we get from creating something, achieving a goal, even just witnessing someone else's success.
Yeah.
It taps into that very human desire to contribute, to make a mark.
Yes, and there's a real sense of agency there too, like, I did that. Okay, moving on to an emotion that, let's be honest, doesn't always get the bad rap. Bored. Our source keeps it real with, the children are bored because it is raining outside.
But boredom. Boredom is so much more than just a rainy day feeling. It's actually a sign that our brains are craving something stimulating, something new, something to really grab our attention. Think about it. When we're engaged, when we're challenged, when we're truly connecting with something, boredom just vanishes.
It's like boredom is a signal telling us to shake things up, find something more fulfilling, I guess.
Right.
Okay. Next up we have confused. Our source gives us this. I am confused by the instructions. We've all been there, am I right?
Oh, for sure. That feeling of like mental gridlock, you're hit with too much info or you're just trying to wrap your head around something new. But here's the thing, confusion, it isn't always a bad thing. It can actually be what pushes us to learn and grow.
It's like that saying, the only stupid question is the one you don't ask. Sometimes you gotta lean into the confusion to get to the other side.
Exactly.
Okay, moving on to an emotion that can be particularly tough to deal with, lonely. Our source paints a pretty poignant picture. He is lonely because he has no one to talk to.
And that really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That longing for connection, that very human need to belong. It reminds us that even when we're surrounded by people, we can still feel incredibly alone if those core needs, those needs for intimacy, for belonging, if those aren't being met.
It's a good reminder to cherish those connections we do have and to reach out when we're the ones feeling that sense of isolation.
Absolutely.
Okay, next up is frustrated. Our source gives us this. She is frustrated because she cannot solve the puzzle.
Oh yeah, that feeling of hitting a wall. You're so close to the solution, but you just can't quite grasp it. Frustration is interesting because it usually pops up when there's a disconnect between what we expect and what's actually happening.
That tension between where we are and where we want to be. And sometimes to get past that frustration, you have to adjust those expectations, find a new approach, or even just step away for a bit and come back to it later.
Right.
Which brings us to our final emotion in this hopeful. The source text gives us this. I am hopeful that I will get the job.
Hope. It's that little spark of optimism, that belief that things will work out, even when we're not sure how. It can be incredibly powerful,
Yeah.
It pushes us to keep going, even when things seem impossible. Like they say, hope springs eternal.
So true. Okay, ready for our final set of words. These are the ones that really, they get into the nitty-gritty of what it means to be human. We're talking embarrassed, jealous, grateful, anxious, calm, and curious.
This last group, they give us a glimpse into, like, our social selves, those little vulnerabilities, those moments that make us...
Well, us. Totally. Okay, let's start with embarrassed. Our source, it gives us this. He is embarrassed because he made a mistake in class.
Oof, we've all been there.
Right, that feeling of like wanting to disappear. Embarrassment is all about those times when, we feel like we messed up in front of other people, like we broke some unspoken rule.
Yeah, it often comes from that fear of being judged, especially when we care about like our image, how we come across.
Exactly. It's like, can I just melt into the floor now?
Right.
Okay, moving on. Next up is jealous. Our source gives us she is jealous because her friend got a new phone.
Ah, good old-fashioned jealousy. This one's fascinating because it often reveals a lot about, what we want, our own insecurities. We see someone else with something, could be an object, a skill, a relationship, and we find ourselves wanting that thing. Mm-hmm. Sometimes even resenting them for having it.
It's like jealousy is a sign pointing us to something we might be missing in our own lives or something we really, really want.
Totally.
Okay, let's switch gears to a more positive emotion. Grateful. Our source keeps it nice and simple. I am grateful for my family and friends.
Timeless, isn't it? Gratitude is about appreciating the good stuff, big or small. Taking a second to acknowledge all those things, we usually take for granted loved ones, our health, even just a beautiful day.
Yeah, like hitting the pause button and just saying, man, I'm lucky to have this. Okay, we're down to the wire here. 2 more to go. Next up, anxious.
The source gives us this. He is anxious about starting his new job.
That feeling of unease, right? That worry about what's coming next. And it often comes with those physical signs, too. Heart racing, sweaty palms, that knot in your stomach.
It's like your body's saying, hey, pay attention. Something big is happening.
Exactly.
Okay, and last but definitely not least, we have curious. Our source gives us this final example. She is curious about how airplanes fly.
Curiosity. That endless thirst for knowledge, that drive to figure out how things work and why things are the way they are. It's what pushes us to explore, ask questions, to never stop learning.
It's the spark that gets our imaginations going and helps us see the world with fresh eyes, right?
100%. And you know what? I think that's a perfect place to wrap things up, this whole deep dive. It's really been about curiosity, wouldn't you say? We took these 20 words, some familiar, some a little less so, and we dug into those subtle differences, how they shape how we feel and how we interact with the world around us.
Absolutely. And remember what our source text said at the very beginning. Mastering these words, it can make us more self-aware and help us communicate more effectively. It's like an invitation to really tune into those feelings inside us and find the words to express them authentically.
So good. So as you go about your day-to-day, I challenge you. Be curious about your own emotional landscape. What are you feeling? And how can you put those feelings into words in a way that feels true to you? Until next time, keep exploring those emotions and keep diving deep.